Almost not a joke. Folks, look, please have a seat. Don't stand for me. Folks, I want to thank your president, and I want to thank Dee for inviting me here. I have one of the proudest things. When I started, I was a 29-year-old kid coming from I guess you call it a modest background. 4 kids, grandpa, 3 bedroom, split level home, safe neighborhood, but we didn't think, we thought we were fine, but I guess we were technically not lower middle class. We didn't think of it that way. I was raised by an Irish Catholic mom and a grandfather and grandmother who you would have thought that they had just emigrated from Ireland yesterday. They have long memories. And I learned early on, when I was born and raised up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, back in the days when my grandfather and my great-grandfather were there, Irish Catholics didn't get treated very well. We were the last ones, not the last ones, but close to the last ones in the mines, and we didn't get treated very well. And there was always this notion, I learned from my dad, who was from Baltimore, that the only way you deal with people who have a lot of money and a lot of power is with power. Don't expect anything good to come from it automatically. Don't expect that somehow they're going to, as they say in Southern Delaware, they're going to have an altar call. They're going to see the Lord and decide what's fair. But folks, things have gotten so bad over the last 30 years. When I got started, the union movement was a lot bigger. Close to 34% of all non-public employees were union members. It's down to 6 because very wealthy in corporate America declared war on labor. I made a speech to the AFL-CIO about 16 years ago in Washington. I said, they declared war on you. And I think they thought I was exaggerating. But there used to be a basic bargain that if you contributed to the welfare of the outfit you worked with, whether it was a hotel, casino, whether it was an electric company, whatever it was, you got to share in the benefits. If they did well, you got a part of it. Your wages went up. Your productivity, meaning business got better, they made more money, you made more money. From the end of World War II, all the way almost to 1980, productivity, business grew 92%. Wages grew 94%. But from that time on, business has grown 68%, but wages have only come up 8%. They don't think they have any obligation, generally speaking, to you all. Let me define what I mean by middle class. I know I'm called Middle Class Joe. It's not meant as a compliment. It means I'm not sophisticated. But I'm pretty damn sophisticated about who built America. No, really. Wall Street didn't build America. Y'all built America. Not true. Middle class built America. And unions, not labor, unions built the middle class. Guess what? Because of fighters like this, you're coming back. You're making progress. Maybe the worst and the best thing that have happened to us was Donald Trump. He's the worst thing, but here's what he did. He made it clear how we're all getting worked over, how there's no fairness out there. He starts off his campaign coming down a golden escalator saying, first thing I do is get rid of those Mexican rapists. Wow. Remember that? Yeah. Then he sets up a Muslim ban. Yeah. Then he says we're about to be invaded, an invasion from Central America. We're going to pollute America. Folks, there's a simple proposition. It's real simple. And understand it well, because you underestimate the consequence you all have for America. The reason America is strong as they are, and I've told this to world leaders, and not a joke, is that simple proposition. The reason we're the most incredible nation in the world is because we are a nation of immigrants. Now let me explain why before you start clapping for yourselves. The reason is we've been able to cherry pick the best from every continent in the world. Let me explain what I mean by that. Whether it's my great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather got on a coffin ship in the Irish Sea because the Brits were starving them to death, not knowing whether ever see his family again, not knowing whether he was going to make it, or whether somebody in Guadalajara sitting around a hand-hewn table today saying, I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have. Let's go out and give it to. Let's go out and give it to a coyote. And they'll take us across the border, a place they don't want us. And they'll drop us in the desert. Won't that be fun? Y'all don't leave because you want to leave. You leave because you have no alternative. But also because you have resolve. You're optimistic. You're resilient. You know how to fight. Not a joke. I'm being deadly earnest. Now, it's not just in the hemisphere. It's not just Latinos. It's across the board. Everywhere in the world where people have made the effort, risked their lives to come here, are the reason why we're who we are. That's how we are the most incredible nation in the history of the world. And America is built on an idea. You can't define American based on what their background is. You can't define American for me other than an idea. And the idea, people don't even use the exact language, but think what it is. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Are we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, do the following. No other nation in the world is organized on a principle. It's bigger, stronger, more resilient than any army in the world, wider than any ocean. It's why we're who we are. And we've got to fight back now. We got to fight back. And folks, I know I'm not supposed to talk this long, so I'll stop. Because I want to hear your question. Here's the deal, guys. For me, when you talk about labor, it gets down to a simple proposition. Pure fairness. I'm not asking you anything, just give me a shot. That was my dad when he lost his job at the coal mines closed in Scranton, and he had to leave. All he said was, just give me a shot. Just a shot. Give me an even playing field. I'm not asking for anything. But don't get in my way. Don't block me. Don't try to stop me. The other piece of this is, you think about it. We are people who, in fact, not only don't ask for anything, we just said, treat me with some dignity. When you look at me like I'm your equal.
Amen.
Look at me like I'm I was raised by a mom who was 5'1", tough as could be. I was lucky. I won the gene pool. I really did. Everybody wanted my mom to be their mom, for real. Some of you were raised like that. All your friends thought your mom was, why didn't they have a mom like that? My mom, I'd come home from a date. We had to be in by midnight for a date. We'd come in this little house we lived in, and my mother, the kitchen table, you could see out of the corner from the little, it had 4 seats, and to walk in the dining room. And my mother, if she's hearing someone's confession, she'd go, like, move, Joey. I don't want you to know your friends in here telling me their problems. My mother was everybody's mom, but here's the deal. She'd look at me. I used to stutter when I was a kid. Be made fun of. She'd look at me and said, Joey, look at me. Joey, remember, no one is better than you.
Amen.
But
Amen.
everyone is your equal. Everyone is your equal. I get in trouble with some things I say, but I want to tell you, just be straight up. If I'm your president, with me it starts here in my gut, goes to my heart, and then I articulate it.
Amen.
I don't trust people who, in fact, to stay with me if it starts here and doesn't ever work its way down to the heart.
Amen.
So, folks, I promise you one thing. If I end up being your president, you will never, ever, ever had in American history someone who was more pro-labor in the White House than Joe Biden.
So we have a few questions, Vice President Biden. And I'm going to start with Chad, who is a cook at Margaritaville on the Strip. By the way, Chad has a shirt that says defeat Trump. That was from the 2016 election. I think we got to say defeat Trump this time.
By the way, I can't cook worth a damn, but I can wash dishes. I know how to do that.
Vice President Biden, I'm Chad Hanover, and I work at Margaritaville as a cook. And earlier this year, my wife ended up in the hospital for 3 days, and it was extremely scary situation. We were uncertain on what was going to happen and everything, but once everything was figured out, the relief came because the hospital, it was a very low, reasonable deductible. We went home, rehab and recovery. They were very fair in what they charged us and everything. And that is why I love my culinary health insurance.
Amen.
And it is a nonprofit plan. It's not a commercial insurance company.
You're going to get to
Take
keep
your
it with
time,
me.
take your time, take your
You're
time.
going to get to keep it with me. You take your time because this is important.
It's all right.
Members like me were told regarding the Affordable Health Care Act that we would not be impacted, which was not true. We were also told if we like what we keep, or we can keep it, also not true. The ACA includes a 40% tax on healthcare benefits, and while it hasn't been implemented yet, we've been fighting for 9 years to repeal that tax, but unfortunately, it's still part of the law. I have a 3-part question for you.
I can guess.
Will you support the 40% tax on our health care? How will you guarantee that we will not get hurt again, whether it's taxes or new costs? What are you planning to change or add to the ACA that will impact us?
Okay.
Good job.
Let me start. Thank you. And by the way, a lot of you have been through some tough health issues. I have too. When I took my wife to the hospital, she died. When I took my daughter to the hospital, she died. When I took my 2 sons in the hospital, they lived.
Jesus.
When they took me to the hospital, they told me I had a 30% chance of living. And I spent 7 months, and I lived, thank God, because of doctors and incredible nurses. My son came home as a decorated hero from the Iraq War. He was diagnosed with brain cancer, and he died. So I get it. I understand. I understand there's nothing as consequential when someone you love and you adore who's close to you, who is your soul, that you have to have 2 things. You have to be able to have peace of mind to know that you can get that person you adore to a place where you think they can get the single best possible coverage possible. Care, not coverage, care. And then you think to yourself, in my case, they're wheeling me down for my operation. I thought to myself, at least I have health care. If I die, my family's not going to go bankrupt. And so the Affordable Care Act came along, and what you're talking about is so-called Cadillac tax. The extra tax that are on some union plans in order to fund Affordable Care Act. It's about to be repealed, that tax. It hadn't gone into effect yet. It's called the Cadillac tax, referred to as. It's already been voted down in the House of Representatives, and I'm confident because the Republicans want to do away with the Affordable Care Act altogether. It will be repealed, number one. We can make up the cost of that I'll go into detail if you want to, but I'm not going to do it now unless you ask me afterwards to do it, as to how I pay for that, how I replace it. Well, let's get something straight about the Affordable Care Act. It's guaranteed that over 100 million Americans who had pre-existing conditions got covered. Before, if you had a child, or a son or a daughter, and you didn't have your union plan, and they had a pre-existing condition, with Down syndrome, they had diabetes, whatever, you couldn't get insurance no matter how, it cost too much. Well, Brock came along, we said, no, you gotta cover, period, pre-existing conditions. 20 million people who never had insurance before automatically had insurance in the United States of America. What we tried to do and couldn't get done, but I'm going to get done in the Biden plan, is make sure we take the Affordable Care Act, restore all the cuts in the Affordable Care Act, and add what we call, sounds corny, it sounds wonky, but a public option, meaning a Medicare option. So anybody who doesn't like the insurance they have can either, if they can afford it, buy into a plan that's online. But what I do is, because we subsidize, we put more money into the plan, over $750 billion over, not trillion, 750 billion, a lot of money over 10 years. What you do is you can buy the gold plan, not have anything more than $1,000 deductible, if you choose to be able, you want to do that. Secondly, anybody who qualifies for Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the Medicare proposal I have. It's Medicare for those who want it. But here's the big deal. Where I come from, I don't like people telling me what I have to choose.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
So the 160 million people who have busted their neck, walked down picket lines, gave up pay, took hits in order to get significant health care available, you get to keep it under my plan. You don't have to give it up.
Amen.
Nice.
Now, Medicare. The whole thing on Obamacare was about where you get to keep your doctor and all that kind of thing. This is a totally different issue. Do you get to keep the health care plan you have and you want? Or can you buy into a gold plan, not, it's called the gold, silver, plans. Can you buy into a better plan? You can, because we'll subsidize what it costs to buy in. It'll be a lot less to buy in. And folks, and I think my friends, you had two people, friends of mine, talked to you before, they're Medicare for all. It's a great idea. Except it has a problem. It costs $35 trillion over 10 years.
Wow.
Now, the fact is that all the money, you can sit down, you don't have to stand for me. All the money of the federal government spends an entire year on every single thing, from military to space stations to everything, to education to highway. Every single penny the government spends doesn't add up to $3 trillion a year. So you'd have to double the budget, at least. Now here's the problem. Middle class taxes are going to go way up. Now Bernie's honest about it. Bernie tells you it's going to cost you, X percent in withholding, and then a direct increase of 4 to 5% in your tax, and it doesn't kick in even if that happened, which it won't. Even if that happened, it doesn't kick in for, if you notice they're talking about it's going to take X years to pass it, then it's going to take whatever a project, it's going to be another 5 years to transition. What I'm talking about happens immediately. Everybody gets covered, taxes don't go up, and we give everybody an option, and you can stay in your plan if you like it. That's
We have Barney, who is a banquet server from Green Valley Ranch, where they voted for the union over 78% over a year ago, and Stations of Fertitta still refuses to negotiate with those workers.
Some of them are going to go to jail.
I've been 13 years, and a few years ago I had some cancerous skin cells that had to be removed from my ear, and the insurance that I have through Station Casino is horrible. And I had to pay $14,000 out of pocket to get adequate health care, to get the surgery, and I'm still paying it off. But one of the reasons why I'm involved in organizing and being a part of the union is for better health care. Culinary insurance is the best in Nevada, probably the best in the land, but anyway, the best in Nevada. And what we would like to know, because of the anxiety and the frustration we've had, not being able to get the Fertittas to come to the table. We had our election. We won a democratic election, and yet they still have not sat down with us. Now, if you get elected to be the President of the United States, you're gonna be able to be president right away. We have not had our contract, even though.
I'm sure what Trump would do though. That's a joke.
Our question to you is, what will you do to ensure that there's a fairer process for those of us workers in America that want to unionize?
Thank you. Look, you probably heard I wrote a pretty strong letter to the brothers that got published. And turns out one of the board members sent me a contribution, which I sent back. Let me tell you a few things you may not know about. There's a thing called the PRO Act. I don't want to get you in. It's a piece of legislation in the Congress. And the PRO Act does a whole lot of good things. But right now, you all realize, even before you get to the brothers, that corporations last year spent $1 billion trying to stop organizing. $1 billion to try to get around the law to keep you from being able to vote, and if you vote, trying to intimidate you into not voting for an election in card check. Now, if we did that to you when you're trying to show up at a polling place, you'd not only get arrested, you'd go to jail if you're convicted of doing that. So here's what I propose, and they know it, and everybody knows it. I propose the following, that if any corporation that you're trying to, or any business you're trying to organize, engages in unfair labor practices, they will receive a minimum of a $50,000 fine. And if it's the second time, it's 100, but that doesn't do it, because these big corporations at billions of dollars, they'll just make their shareholders pay for it. So what I proposed is the following, that if in fact you engage in a practice where you get organized in the first place, and then you don't bargain in good faith, there's a mechanism set up where you have mandatory arbitration. Arbiters are picked independently, and they come in and they force a negotiation. They require the corporation to negotiate with you. And whatever that operation comes out of, how that comes out, whatever you in fact deal with, how you strike or don't strike, what you demand, what you don't demand, the corporation has to accept that. But because of what these guys are doing, I think we should change the law. I'm amending the PRO Act to require that if you deliberately get involved in trying to prevent, even after an election occurs, legitimate bargaining, that you not only have a giant fine that goes to you, not your corporation, that if it really is egregious, you are criminally liable for doing it. Get attention. They'll get their attention, that focus. Nothing like it. But that's what's going to happen. And the reason you say, well, Joe, what makes you think you can get it done? Well, look what's happened, everybody. There's a lot of things that people thought they knew that they had no idea about, including some of you, everybody. Union people, non-union people. Now, this guy over there, the good-looking guy with the hair over there, well, you know, he said he's a stable genius. Anyway, look, but here's the deal. There's two ways people get inspired. They get inspired by a president like John Kennedy who literally lifts their spirits up and inspires them. And they get inspired by very bad people too. Because when they see what the bad people are doing, it makes them realize, oh my God, I didn't know that was happening. Even though we talk about it, until it happens to more and more people, they say, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Well, guess what? Everybody now knows. I'll give you an example. I was talking to Dee about it. I went up to help, to walk the picket line with the union that was trying to get better wages with Stop and Shop. I was up in Massachusetts, and I was telling them what I did was I went out and I stood there and on the picket line, and they asked me to speak to the president of the union. And there were about 1,000 people in this giant parking lot. It was a big shopping center. And I looked out, and at least, they said there were 1,000 people. I don't know how many, there were a lot. And if there were 1,000 people there, probably only 300 were union members. The rest were non-union people. But all of a sudden, guess what's happened now? Now that there's this war declared on labor, and it's becoming clear to everybody, and particularly the way he talks about it, what's happened? Non-union members are already figuring out the only reason I get paid overtime is because of unions. The only reason why I have a 40-hour week is because of unions. The only reason I go, and it just goes on and on and on, because of unions. Because you know what they're finding out? Not only have they beat up unions for so long, now they started on individuals being able to bargain from that work. How many of you know somebody who works at a sandwich shop, McDonald's or a Jimmy John's or Burger King, whatever, has to sign a non-compete agreement? They have to sign an agreement. They won't walk across town to try to get 5 cents more working for another outfit. That's all about, by the way, 40 million people, they have to sign those agreements to get the job. It's wrong. They also have to sign agreements when they go to work for big corporations these days, unless they have a union, that says that there'll be mandatory arbitration. So what happens? The other, not for unions, mandatory arbitration, meaning that if you're a woman and you're sexually harassed or moved, you can't sue. You have to have an arbiter come in and decide what's going to happen, rather than going ripping them apart for what they've done to you. But also you have a circumstance now where just last year alone, the way they've reclassified hourly workers as management. If you're working in a supermarket and you're stacking spaghetti sauce and you control the person who runs the forklift out of the back room, you're now a manager. That cost workers, hourly workers, $1.2 billion last year. $1.2 billion. You know where it went? Went to shareholders. Went back into the corporations. I can go on. You know anybody who wants to have for example, to braid hair, to get a license to braid hair in Texas, you have to have 60 hours of training. Even though you may braid hair here in the state of Nevada, you can't transfer it. It's all about keeping competition down. That's what these guys are all about. And all of a sudden, workers have figured it out, and now they're saying, they're learning how to pronounce the word union. Union.
All right. Vice President Biden, we have folks from around the country. Isaac was a former operator. He is from Disney World in Orlando, where we are working.
How you doing, Mr. Vice President?
I'm doing well, man.
My name's Isaac Kroc. I'm from Central Florida. I've lived there since 1992, and our union's doing great work there. We're actually working, representing 18,000 workers in Central Florida. And what's really important is that this union has taught us how to protect and fight for immigrant workers and workers working out there who can afford it, okay? But I want to talk about the immigrant workers right now. In Central Florida, we're growing. We're growing very fast. A lot of the workers in Central Florida are very afraid that they will get that knock on their door and that they will be deported. You know what the president said about workers from Haiti, people from Haiti. They're coming from Haiti, coming to Central Florida, and they're building their homes, their houses. And they shouldn't have to leave after they've had children here and built their lives here in the U.S. We're working really hard because when we go to those houses, this union has taught us how to house visit and actually talk to the members of our union. And when we see a picture of a child on the wall, when we see a picture on the wall of a serviceman or servicewoman, their children are actually serving in our military, but it's hard for them to become citizens. Temporary protective status, TPS, is really, really huge in Central Florida. Now, Mr. Vice President, under your administration, there were more people deported. More people deported during your administration. And we condemn Donald Trump for this same thing. My question for you is, if you're elected president, what are you going to do that is different during your presidency?
A lot. Number one, we understand the incredible pain of a family being separated or sending back. Incredible pain. And as I said at the outset, it's all about, in my view, family. And so, for example, there's no reason why someone here on a green card should have to choose between whether his or her husband or wife and children come along, or they can bring to the United States their infirm father or mother. And so that's going to end counting children and spouses as somehow part of that number that is increased at how many people can come into the United States that are family members beyond that. That'll end on my advice. Number two, the idea that anyone will be deported without actually having committed a felony or a serious crime is going to end in my administration. Nobody's going to be standing outside of Mass as you come out to arrest somebody because they showed up at church. No one's going to be able to be at a school, ICE agents standing at a school. They're going to have to go back to school themselves. No, I'm not joking about this. I'm deadly earnest about it. And no one should be able to be at the front door of the house knocking on the door to deport anybody for anything other than a serious crime. For real, I'm not trying to be nice. This is just simple practice. Because folks, it should be all about family unification. Family unification. That should be the essence of it. That should be what we're talking. And the other thing is, what I'm proposing is that we, in fact, fund operations like Catholic Charities, fund operations like the Lutheran Church, fund operations like good government organizations that are finding refuge in places welcome for people who are immigrants coming to the United States of America, to give them the kind of coverage, the kind of protection that they need. So it's going to be a fundamentally different focus. And with regard to anybody who has, can you imagine? Look, one of the greatest things I was able to do as vice president, one of the neatest things, and my wife, Jill, was I think the only first or second lady ever go into a war zone with me. She traveled to Iraq, and I've been in and out of Iraq many, many times. And we, in the middle of the war. She traveled to Iraq with me. You know what I got to do, Dee? There were somewhere around 700 Iraqi military officers in one of Saddam Hussein's god-awful, gaudy palaces called Afwa Palace. And I got to swear in all of them as United States citizens. Not one had been a citizen. Silver stars, bronze stars, purple hearts, people who lost limbs, and swear them in. Now look what this guy's doing. Deporting people who served our military and or their children because they are not citizens. Guess what's happening? Under my administration, they will be immediately invited back to the country. They go back. No one else goes back. No, I really mean it. There's many other things I want to talk to you about, and I'm not going to do it because I can see I'm going too long and I'm trespassing on your goodwill. But I put together a very extensive, we released today, a very extensive immigration plan. And it lays out, for example, we're going to, we're going to get rid of Trump's, migrant protection protocols and, moving it, and the Muslim ban, protect TPS. You said TPS. You all know TPS, what it is. I know this audience does. Well, we should be engaging in offering our help to organize this hemisphere right now, because you're going to have the destabilization of countries from Belize to Brazil to Colombia because of the millions of people that are fleeing from Venezuela because that thug who runs Venezuela. And we should be saying what we tried to do in Europe. Why in God's name aren't we saying, okay, we're going to organize the world and the country, the hemisphere, to deal with providing for the additional burden it places on those countries and provide for temporary protective status for those Venezuelans who are being persecuted now and are fleeing. That's what we should be doing. We should not be ending temporary protective status for people to have to go back to places where they cannot go. And they cannot. This guy, I'm the guy that wrote the Violence Against Women Act. And one of the things I wrote into the Violence Against Women Act is that you, in fact, cannot be deported if you are here undocumented and you're beaten up or you're raped or you're mistreated and you report it. You cannot be deported because you reported that. Well, here's what he's doing now. Look at, there's no longer anything dealing, we don't have a program that provides for what has always been the Statute of Liberty, send me your this. What we really meant was that send us the people who are really in trouble. Women who are being abused in their home countries, that are being beaten, raped, abused, no longer can have access seeking to come here, and he's blocked that all off. You have people now, as you all know, better than I do, coming up. I was in charge of trying to put together a program, and I got it done in a bipartisan way to spend $750 million to provide, and I met extensively for literally over 15 hours with the presidents of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador to say, we're going to change the reason why people leave in the first place. And one of the things to do is to make sure that it's not a corrupt system, make sure there's lighting on the streets, make sure there's schools that are real, make sure there's boys and girls clubs, make sure, but we're not going to give the money directly to the leaders because a lot of them are corrupt. So we wrote out in detailed plans exactly how we were going to do this, and we're going to go in and we decide that we're going to go in to a school district and we build a new school. And we'd hire teachers. We'd go in and we'd run like we did in Colombia. We'd run background checks on corrupt cops and the like. But guess what? When we did it, all of a sudden you saw that migration, the flow of unaccompanied children stop almost completely. And we arranged for people to be in a position where they had protection. Well, this guy comes along and he ends the program. I'm going to change that. I'm going to spend literally $1 billion a year to build up those countries so that there's no reason to leave in the beginning. Right. That's the reason. Anyway, so there's a lot more. Take a look. Go on JoeBiden.com. It's all about families. It's about families to me.
So there's two more questions.
Yes or no?
I got one. Randy, who is a server, bartender, she's right there, from the great city of Philadelphia.
All right, Randy. I married a Philly girl.
Hello, I'm Randy. I'm from Philly. I work at
You can
Ultimate.
tell she says Broad Street Coffee.
So I work at all three stadiums, and sorry. Trump won Pennsylvania by promising a stronger economy and more jobs. So I work 3 jobs. I pick up a 4th. I broke my foot there. It's very hard. And that's the norm for people in Philly, is to work 2, 3, 4 jobs. What's your plan to make sure the economy works for us? Like for a swing state like Pennsylvania, how are the Democrats going to be tough on these issues for us?
First of all, thank you. You know, everybody talks about $15 an hour. I think that is a bare minimum. That's just a start. That's not where that's not enough. That just allows you to raise, they raise the minimum wage to 15. That just means you work 40 hours a week and you don't technically live in poverty. It doesn't give you any breathing room. So there's 3 things we're going to do in terms of, I'm going to start to reward work, not wealth. Let me explain what I mean by that. Right now, you pay my guess is, I'm not asking your salary, but my guess is, you pay at a tax rate, the percentage of your income you pay in taxes, probably is equal or more than somebody making $30-40 million a year. For real. That's how the tax cut goes, because we have a thing called capital gains. And it's not about capital gain in your home. It means that if you are investing your money to make money on your money, that's not taxed at whatever your tax rate is. And so you have a cop or a firefighter or you have a culinary worker who's going to pay a higher percentage of their income than someone who is a bond trader on Wall Street, or someone who is a multi-millionaire like the brothers we love so much. And no, for real, that's what happens. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to end that capital gains tax. So you have to be taxed at right now it's only 20%. So if you make all your money by investing your money, you only pay 20% tax. Some of you are going to pay taxes that are more like 28, 29%. And so the fact is that we're going to make sure that they have to pay whatever their tax rate is. And it should be a minimum of 40%. So that will double the amount of money. That will increase $800 billion immediately in additional revenue to be able to do things like make up for the loss of the income from the Cadillac tax. So we don't have to tax unions. That's going to increase the prospect that we'll be able to fund Title I schools, so we have kids going to school at age 3, 4, and 5, not daycare, school, increasing exponentially their prospects of succeeding. And by the way, giving women and men, I used to be a single father. I was a single father for 5 years. I made a decent salary as a United States Senator, $42,000 a year. But guess what? I couldn't afford any help outside. No way I could, if you live, I don't know what it is here in Las Vegas, in Philadelphia, it's $22,000 a child. And so the whole idea here is start making people pay for what they in fact earn, not pay on what they in fact reward work the same way that we reward wealth, instead of focusing on giving wealth a break. We have to fundamentally change the way in which, look, what Trump did, Trump came along and got the votes to give a $1,900 billion tax break, making the top 0.1% earn more money than almost everybody else in the United States of America. It's sick, it's bizarre. And what it does is it allows people to go out, and he then goes and says, if you have a problem and you're not doing well, what's he say? It's because of that immigrant man coming and taking your job. Because of that black guy who got a preference to get your job. It's because of, I'm serious. He's divided the nation on it because he has hurt so many people. They're susceptible to saying, why is this happening to me? He told me he was going to take care of it. He's going to make it fair. And so the other thing we're going to do is make sure that people are in a position where at the front end, when these beautiful young children, God, they're good kids, being patient. You guys tired of sitting before? You can come up here and sit on the stage if you want. You want to come up here and sit? You can come up here if you want. Sit up here. You okay? And anyway, but here's the deal. What's happened is that if in fact we allow for investing in education in our kids early on, it will fundamentally change their opportunities later on. It's a gigantic impact. For example, we've learned a lot about drug abuse, and everybody has in their family, had it in mind. And what happens? What happens is they think it's because drugs cause mental problems. No, mental illness causes drug problems.
Amen.
Mental illness causes drug problems. And so, yet, in our schools today, we have one school psychologist for every 1,507 kids. 1,500. It's impossible. But you can identify early on the problems kids have and get them help early on and avoid the path. I'm not just talking about drugs. Avoid the path of failure across the board because they get an even chance. And so there's so many things we can do. Secondly, there's a lot to talk about, but we got to make sure that, in fact, we provide the kinds of jobs that don't make you $15 an hour, but where you can make $40 an hour, $50 an hour. And let me give you an example. So, I'll just give you one example. we have a serious problem with climate change. It is a gigantic problem, and if we don't address it, we're going to be in real trouble. We're going to literally lose part of the earth. And so what we have out there, I went out yesterday to meet with the IBW guys. Out, they're talking about, they have 5 projects. They're going to have so many megawatts of electricity from solar panels out there. But here's the deal. We need to do it to save the environment. But guess what? It's creating hundreds and hundreds of good paying $65 an hour jobs counting benefits. They're going to do the same thing. For example, why don't we invest in electric vehicles? Well, if we're going to have to provide for 550,000 charging stations along our highways. You see the scooters in the big cities, right? Well, guess what? You can pick up a scooter, drive it across town, ride it across town, plug it in, you pay whatever it costs to plug it in when you left it, because you use your card. Well, the same thing can happen. That'll create over 10 million new jobs. Good, decent paying jobs. Union jobs. Jobs that in fact pay not on average 15, but on average $45 to $65 an hour. But we got to turn the opportunities, the problems we have into significant opportunities. And the biggest thing is to take away the power that Trump is pushing hard to allow business to prevent you from being able to be in a position where you can bargain for your worth. It gets back to unions. It gets back to unions.
Thank you. So, Mr. Vice President, we really want to thank you. I'd like to bring up Vicki and Sandra. Come on up here. These were the undocumented Trump workers who worked at the country club, who basically left the place because they were sick and tired of being viewed as anything less than equal. And I'm happy to report, very happy, that one of them, which one are you? Right here? Vicki has now got status, and she will start working at a Unite Here Union Hotel in New York City. Where she will be making as a housekeeper $32 an hour with full benefits. That's the American dream. That's what we're fighting for. It is a story that we all share. Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President.
I say one last thing to y'all. Look, we owe you. No. This is really important. The rest of the country owes you for what you're doing. Not a joke. Look, the National Labor Relations Act, which was passed back in that's a fancy term, but allowed unions to form back in 1930s under Franklin Roosevelt. You know what it said? It didn't say there can be unions. It said we should promote unions. I promise you, if I'm sitting behind that desk in the White House, I'm going to be promoting unions because you grow the economy, you improve everybody's life. The wealthy do very well when you're doing well, and guess what? The poor have a way up. So thank you, we owe you.